Meeting to order. We're starting with a workshop session tonight, and I'm going to let Mr. Ryan introduce this workshop session because he was so excited about it. I'm excited to hear about it, but some great things
Super
to say.
excited. Knowing the emphasis that we put on literacy over the last several years, and looking at the ways to actually get from saying you want to do something in one excellence and actually producing it. I had the opportunity last 2 weeks ago at Oakland University as part of my graduate program to talk a little bit about teacher professional learning and development, and led a little class of graduate students, about half of them are superintendents, and we were talking about the topic of if you actually want teachers to improve practice to where it affects learning, ultimately being the focus on kids, especially early literacy, and getting kids that gift of being able to read by the time they're in third grade. And we looked at the difference between when teachers sit in an auditorium in a collective, worst case situation, that the actual effect on practice is roughly 5%, the research says. And then you run the gamut from small groups to watching practice to teachers watching, teachers who can teach, all the way to the coaching model that we're deploying here in Clarkston. And it goes all the way up to 90-some% of influencing practice. So I think you talk about having perfect practice to get the results you want. I think it's a combination right now of the right ideas in terms of the coaching model. And I think it's also a thought towards, we just didn't take teachers off the street to do this, which is kind of another common, I want to say, mistake that school districts who even have their best intentions put forth make. And I think also looking at the idea of what you invest in your coaches to bring that practice. And I'm tremendously proud that we're cycling our coaches right now through the gold standard, literally in the world, which is at Columbia University in New York City for Teachers College and the literacy preparation. Totally brings it into focus what we're trying to do in the long term. It's not like a simple deploy in the fall, collect test results in the spring type initiative. It's something that I feel like in the tenure of this administration and within our literacy program, it's something that we're going to be sticking with for many years at the core of really improving practice. Because the other fact that we know is that it's not about interventions pulling kids out and doing reading recovery or, well actually that's a really good one, but looking at some sort of smorgasbord of somehow fixing kids and bringing back. We know we want 80 to 90% of our kids to get it in the classroom. Up to now, I think most schools across the country have kind of leaned on that notion of, give it the best try and see what happens, without kind of getting that middle step of looking at how teachers actually bring that instruction to students. So to pull that all together, we literally are, I would say, are blessed right now in Clarkston to have this type of resource that we're building over a period of years to get that level of excellence. And then lastly, as you see them as they kind of little cohort here in the corner, one thing about bringing continuity and coherence to an entire school district is you don't silo people off, right? You need them so they can work as part of a coherent team. And just to give you a little insight, I pop in these guys all the time. Sometimes they're at F&G, sometimes they're in here. And it's like you walk in and you feel the heat in the room. And sometimes I kind of like, give the excuse me, and they all kind of pop up and say hello. But the synergy and the energy and the focus is amazing to me. So I'll let Phyllis, she might want to say a couple words to kind of kick off the specific experience. But I was really, really impressed when our administrator started a very similar presentation to this a couple weeks ago.
Thank you, Sean. It is just wonderful to have these three amazing, and as Sean said, outstanding educators representing Clarkston at Teachers College. I've had the opportunity in the past to attend, and I was so thrilled to be able to have them go and experience the learning that is provided there. They'll share with you the statistics on how many people apply. Each year it's in the many thousands, over 7,000 people apply, and for each institute they choose only about 1,200 to attend. So to have our teachers chosen and have all three of them be able to go and learn from the best of the best, with Lucy kicking it off, as they'll tell you, and then attending small group sessions It truly was an amazing experience for each of them, and more importantly, they've been able to come back and share that learning with our teachers across the entire district. They've been to, I think, 5 elementary schools already, giving presentations to the staff as well as to our principals, and then, of course, to all of you. They've also helped their other colleagues, their other coaches, learn in a very deep way what they took away from their time at Teachers College. So all of us have benefited from this experience, and I'm thrilled that they can share their learning with you this evening. So take it away, ladies.
All right, well, thank you, for having us here today. I think we are just beyond grateful that we were able to attend, this incredible institute.
Maybe you want to just introduce yourself real quick, just to where you guys
No,
are.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, I was giving you that honor to
Great.
fill it, so I would have stolen.
Yeah, I'm Megan Brazier. I'm the literacy coach over at Pine Knob.
I'm Erin Kuhn, I'm the literacy coach at North Saskatchewan Elementary.
And I'm Jane Finney, and I'm over at Springfield Plains.
Okay, we start. No, really, we were just beyond grateful from the moment that we found out that we might get a chance to go. Right, this has been always like a dream that you have in your head as a teacher, as we've been studying, workshop for years and years and years, like Lucy Calkins and all these researchers that we heard about. So we just felt just incredibly blessed that we were even able to attend this. And then throughout our week, I think we were even more grateful as the days went on, especially that we were together, that we could process this learning together, that we could talk with each other, because ultimately that made our own learning stronger so that we could bring it back to teachers, administrators, and truly make an impact on literacy development. So today, our whole goals, we'll share with you some of the big highlights of our learning. And I think one of the big takeaways we hope that you hear is that this whole week in our whole presentation is all about balance. It's all about all of these components of literacy that work together. That it's not just one standalone curriculum, but it's all of these parts. And so some of these terms that you hear might not be new, and in fact they weren't new to a lot of our teachers, but the how and why behind them is some new learning for everyone. Also, hopefully tonight you'll hear just ways that the literacy coaching team in the district are supporting these initiatives for teachers so that they do become mainstay practices. Because some of them, like I said, we've known about, but as we focus on one thing, other things kind of fall off the burner. And so that's our goal, is to kind of bring all of these big pieces back to the forefront and really help people understand the why behind them and how to make them work. The other things that you see up there, we had some themes that were woven into our week's day of joy, engagement, transfer, pacing, and I talked a little bit about balance, but really joy being at the center of all that we do, instructionally and just in our role as teachers and helping to infuse that in children. And so we hope that you hear that throughout the presentation as we go through some of these big components today.
Okay, I'm reminded of our little kindergartners who come into the classroom first day of school, the first full day when they don't have their parents with them, and they walk in the door. And of course, I've been a kindergarten teacher at Springfield for a long time, so I see them come in the door and they stand in the middle of the room with their eyes just like this, and they're in awe that they're at the school, they're at the big kids school, they're at Springfield Plains or Andersonville or whatever school it is. They're so excited that they have made it, And I think that Erin, Megan, and I kind of felt like that when we walked onto the campus of Columbia University and saw that sign up there that said Teachers College, and we were like, oh my goodness, it seemed like just a dream to us, and we walked up there and we were like, wow, we're going to get to study and learn with Lucy Calkins and my colleagues at Columbia University. What a special, wonderful thing, what a wonderful opportunity. So we're so grateful that we had this chance, and of course I'm going to cry. I'm counting the seconds, and I got no one in my head. Don't do it. So it was very powerful to us. Lucy Calkins, of course, has dedicated her life. She and her colleagues have dedicated their lives to studying, piloting, researching, working with kids, writing curriculum, so that they could reach and optimize reading and writing proficiencies for diverse populations of children throughout and across the world. And so it's important work that they do. And we are very grateful to spend a week delving in and learning with these wonderful people. You need to know that Lucy Calkins and her colleagues at Teachers College, they have written, their focus is reading and writing workshop. And they have looked at all this research, decades of research. It kind of underpins everything that they have done and that they have published. We picked out a few of the big ideas, and you can see a few of the researchers' names down below. Honestly, if we were to write all the names of the research that has been referred to throughout all of her work, it would take pages, several slides just to put all the names up there. So we just put a few. And this is some of the underpinnings, the research that supports her work. Of course, first and foremost, all avid readers need a great teacher. And, great teachers become great because they have professional learning that allows them to have explicit instruction, and they have chances in a collaborative environment to try things and take risks and learn from each other. So that's a big piece, and I know that we're well aware of that and working toward that in Clarkston, so it's huge for us. The other piece is, of course, readers need time to practice reading. And so that gets to what Megan was talking about earlier about keeping the instruction tight, short, so that kids actually have time to really delve into books and practice and not listen to the teacher talk so long that they don't get a chance to practice the strategies that are being introduced. Avid readers need access to books, lots of books, and increasingly complex books so that they can practice growing along that continuum. They need explicit instruction, and of course they need opportunities to talk. We all, when we read a new book, we want to talk about it with someone else, so that reading partnership time is very important. Readers also need support for reading nonfiction texts, because lots of times there's vocabulary or background knowledge that they need in order to process. We know that assessment-based instruction is fabulous because it targets, once you look at your assessment, you can really think about what are the very next instructional steps kids need as they move along that continuum. And then, of course, Lucy is all about that balanced literacy approach. She's about reading and writing workshop, but within her lessons, she very much talks about all the different components that would happen outside of workshop that support kids learning and utilizing and growing as much as they can through workshop. So what Erin is going to do next is talk about that balanced literacy approach and what that means.
So I think one of the largest themes that we heard throughout our week was this idea of balance. And so I think foundationally it starts with balance in the components of a literacy program. We put this picture up here from one of our presentations because we thought it did a nice job of showing that although reading workshop is the heart of what we do, there are these other components to consider, to plan for, to be intentional about. And so you see writing workshop is up there. We learned a lot about interactive writing, word study, shared reading, and then read aloud with accountable talk. And so thinking about the balance of those components, but also thinking about balance within each one of those components. And so within each of those components, we want to balance the types of reading that we're doing with students. We want students, we're reading to students, we're reading with students, and then students are reading independently by themselves. We want to balance in the types of skills and strategies that we're teaching to students. So focusing on comprehension, fluency, print work. We want a balance of the types of teaching that we're doing, both in isolation and in context. The types of instructional groupings that we're exposing our students to, whether it's large group, small group, or that one-on-one time is very important. The types of genres we're exposing students to, and then lastly, the balance within our schedules. So knowing that we want a spot for each one of these components in our schedules, but also knowing that our schedules will change throughout the year. So a schedule at the beginning of the year may be a little different than what it would look like in January or towards the end of the year. And so knowing that flexibility in our scheduling.
So, for many years we've been really focusing in Clarkston on developing this reading and writing workshop, which is just this incredible structure that we've worked really hard to develop. As we've been developing that, though, I think we've talked a lot about what reading workshops should look like and the structures that need to be in place, and people have a really good understanding of those. Like, we're moving really forward with those, but what's gotten lost for some people is the why behind it. And so we started our institute by talking about, well, what do avid readers do? And so, we really got this picture in our minds of someone that you know in your life who's an avid reader. And we thought about all the characteristics, and those are kind of listed in that first column in there. That avid readers, when we think about those people, they're people who read every day. They're people who choose their own books to read. That they have favorite places to read, right? I was picturing, I have my own pictures in my head of like my husband, and I'm thinking, oh, I know where to find him if he's not, when I'm looking for him. He's in one of two spots in our house, right, reading. Avid readers make a plan for the reading in the sense that there is a stack of books like this high on the bedside table next to us that's going to fall over. He knows what he's going to read next as soon as he's done, right? There's this giant stack. There's a plan for reading. Also, that avid readers read in cycles of focus. So perhaps in the summer it's all about gardening, because that's really what you're into at that time. But then come fall, well, maybe it's all about sports, right? It's all about your favorite football team, or it's about cooking. Whatever your focus shifts, though, as readers. So avid readers read in those cycles of focus. And then also that avid readers talk to others about their reading, whether it's something they don't understand in a book, or they hated the way it ended, that we talk to each other. And so when we think about that's what avid readers do, that's why in Clarkston we chose to do reading workshop. It's why Teachers College chose to do reading workshop. They started by saying teaching reading using reading workshop is not the only way to teach reading. Teaching reading using reading workshop is a choice. It's a choice that we made that's based on research, but it's also a choice that we made because we truly believe in apprenticing children in the life of an avid reader. And I was just like, wow, yes, it's not just the structure we need to stand behind, but it's the why behind it, because this is what we truly believe for kids. And so our workshop structure has all those components in it. That's why we have it on our schedule every day. That's why we do things like let kids book shop. It's why we give them a choice of reading spots and have book logs and that so that they can make a plan. It's why we have units of study and why we have those times in our day for partnerships. So there's a reason for those components. Now, as I said, we spent a lot of time working on our structure, which is hugely important because it's when we understand the structure that truly helps us spend less time talking and more time letting kids read and teaching into what they need. So understanding those clear structural components helps us to move our mini lessons along faster, truly make sure they're mini. They also allow us as teachers to adapt our mini lessons because we understand the structure. We know how to teach it, so we can adapt based on our assessment data and say, okay, well, my kids don't need this mini lesson, but they need this, and I can really easily fit it in that structure because it's built for that. The last quote up there, well, the last thing I'll read up there is a quote at the very top from that Lucy Calkins herself said at the very at her kickoff speech. She said, who cares how many times you're repeating the teaching point, which is an incredible instructional practice, but she said, who cares how many times you're repeating the teaching point if kids aren't reading up a storm? First things first, don't get lost in the minutia. Just reminding everyone that the heart of Reading Workshop is joy, and that our very first job is to build a love of reading for our kids and to bring that joy into it. Shared reading. So I'm going to keep talking for just a little bit about shared reading. And so going into the Institute, we knew as a literacy team that shared reading was going to be a big focus for our upcoming school year. We decided that based on our data from our reading growth plans last year. We knew that phonics and phonemic awareness were areas that we needed to beef up in our district. We needed to kind of help teachers with that core instructional part. And we thought shared reading is a lens where we can do that, where we can support those big components, but also have some other really critical skills involved in raising that core instruction. So what is it? So shared reading is a time of day where all kids' eyes are on the same text. Usually it's a big book or something enlarged on the screen, but the teacher's controlling what the kids can and can't see. Teachers College kind of compared it, well, they said it, they added to the definition that it's a short, celebratory, participatory, and a bit raucous time of day, which made me laugh, at first, and then they were comparing it to an image of a concert, and they said, imagine you're at, you're at a concert with your favorite band, right, your favorite singer, and your favorite song comes on, right, the chorus is happening, and there are times that you can't even hear the singer's voice because the crowd is so loud, right? They're singing, and that's what shared reading is. There are times when you are reading and shared reading and you can't hear the teacher's voice because the kids know that text so well. They are chanting it, they are smiling, they're laughing, but there's other times that there's trickier parts where that singer, that teacher's voice rises above the rest. And so they're helping them through those tricky parts. And so it's this incredibly engaging time of day, but it's also this short time of day with this huge impact. You know, Erin mentioned earlier the to with by balancing that, and shared reading is all of that in one. It's the teacher reading to the students, especially on that first read, modeling it, but it's inviting children from the very first read to read along with the teacher. They're rereading certain parts. From Teachers College, we talked extensively about a 5-day shared reading plan. So where we would use the same book every day for a different purpose. And one of those days is explicitly on phonics and phonemic awareness. So you're reading this book multiple times with a different purpose. But like I said, kids are loving this. I've actually had just an incredible privilege of trying this out in some kindergarten classes, and they think my name is Mrs. Wishy-Washy right now. That's how much they love this book. I mean, and they were chanting it from the very beginning. They knew that book from the third time I read it, and the skills that we were able to talk about in this one book were incredible. These are kids who can't read yet, and yet they come up to me and say, I can read that book, Mrs. Frazier, you know, can I see that? And they're pointing to the words. And so there's such incredible power in this short time of day that this is an instructional practice that right now, we're a little bit all over the place. For some teachers, they've been doing shared reading for a while, and so it has remained in their practice. And for others, it's dropped off or they've never done it. And so part of our role this year, I told you it was going to be a focus anyway, shared reading is going to be one of our coaching cycle models. So we are going to actually start this whole shared reading process in a developmental day led by Phyllis, where she's going to do some sharing, some district-wide sharing on what is shared reading. We're going to introduce a 5-day plan. We're going to do a lab experience. But then even more importantly, with our coaching cycle, we're going to follow up and continue that professional learning. Because we know that professional learning has to be more than one time to really make it stick. So that next week, the coaches are going to go in and do some more modeling of the next couple days of the plan. Following those modeling sessions, we're going to have some extended talk time where one teacher, if we go into a classroom in Jan's school, maybe I'm modeling the lesson, and Jan's sitting with the teacher, talking through the experience with her, and then Jan and her classroom teacher leave for a half an hour to an hour to debrief about it. Well, I'll stay and continue to teach, that class, so we don't have to get subs, but we're having built-in professional learning right there. And even better than that, we're coming back 2 weeks later to do the whole thing again. So it's this continuous model of professional development that we're really working toward to make some sustained learning to make a true impact. And so that's kind of where we are this year.
All right, interactive writing. I love this piece right at the bottom that says it's a small practice with big results. Because it's a small practice because it's short. It's 15 minutes or less, but it has a huge impact on children. So if you look up there, interactive writing is based, the teacher's pulling upon a common experience that all the children have or common need. And I'll talk about some examples in a minute. She's serving as the expert writer. She's taking the kids, the whole class, or a small group of children, through the whole writing process of generating ideas. They're brainstorming, generating, they're rehearsing what they're going to say. They co-collaborate what they'd like to write. They get a chance to draft and share the pen, so they get to write some of that, and the teacher's helping them through. And then, of course, they publish, they share and publish their writing. And it happens in a very quick time frame. So, for example, if we're in kindergarten, we might decide there's a need in the classroom to label some of the parts of the room so kids can access that when they're at writing workshop. They might like to label what window, how do you spell window, what about the door? Maybe they're going to label the mailboxes. And so the teacher might just be focusing on the initial sound. And so we get window and we figure out it's a W to start, write window. Somebody might even know how to write the word N, and they're adding that in, and then the teacher finishes out the word, and you pop it up at the window, so that's a chance to label that. Later on in the year, they might be writing a thank you note to the room parents who put on this wonderful Halloween party for them, and they want to write a thank you note, so they're going to rehearse and think about what they'd like to write. We love the party, or they might start this way. Dear Mrs. Bloom, we love the party. Thanks. Love kindergarten. So we know we've got 10 words, so we're going to write those, and we'll take them right through that process. Older kids might write the findings to a science project, and what did they learn? And they might write one thing they learned each day, so it keeps it at 15 minutes, highly engaging and joyful. So that's kind of what that process looks like, and we're super excited to introduce and talk about it. Many teachers know about interactive writing. Some have dabbled in it, some know a whole lot about it, and some don't know as much. And so we're looking forward to doing a coaching cycle again with that practice. And people would say, why would you want to do this? Again, we're modeling for the children. If we do it every day or 2 or 3 times a week, this 15-minute powerful practice, we're modeling for kids. How do you write? How do you start thinking about your ideas? How does that whole process work to get it to where you have a finished piece? So we're modeling for children. They can access that practice by doing it all together when they're actually at writing workshop themselves and doing this. The other piece that's really cool is that last year we were writing our reading growth plans with some of the children who need a little help in reading and writing. And so we had them on a reading growth plan, and we figured out that most of the children in the district across all of the schools had an instructional focus for phonemic awareness and phonics. So we know that's a need for children. That's something that we wanted to target and make sure that children had that component, because it will really help them to move along that continuum. And so interactive writing is powerful for phonemic awareness and phonics, so we want to really address that. Again, coaching model, probably in the middle of the year, we're talking December, January, we'll get into, after we do shared reading, our next coaching cycle will lead us into interactive writing, and we know it's going to be powerful, and we can't wait to do it.
And another one of the components of our balanced literacy program was read aloud. And so when we think about read aloud, there are 3 main types that we're doing with our class. And the first is just sharing or reading a book aloud, just for enjoyment, just sharing a story with your class. Another might be rereading a story, perhaps with a different lens, a different perspective. And then the third type of read aloud is read aloud with accountable talk. And while we want all 3 in our classrooms, it's really the last that we want to give emphasis to, because read aloud with accountable talk is the type of read aloud that allows us to explicitly teach skills and strategies to our readers. And so what does that look like? That would be a teacher sharing a story with the class, stopping at sort of predetermined spots along the way, either maybe asking a question, doing some think aloud, just kind of modeling some strategies for her students. And so really it's this balance of a teacher thinking aloud and modeling, and then students being able to try out those strategies through partner talk and their own thinking. And so really it's that balance between teacher and student. Right now, I think teachers are doing all 3 types of these read alouds in their classes. We did do a little work last year with teachers on read aloud with accountable talk. This was primarily done with Upper L. It was tied to a literacy boot camp that we did before our unstop, and so we actually were able to purchase some resources and provide a lesson plan and some books to our teachers. And we do have some additional lessons and books that we're looking forward to share with them. So while not a coaching model this year, we are doing work to support that growth. And so just a couple of quotes that we have up here. These were from our sessions. This is a time that you're having a lot of participation at this very high cognitive demand, which allows all students to access this higher level text. So regardless of reading ability, your students are able to engage with high level text and higher level thinking skills. And so really it sort of levels that playing field for our readers.
I think with all of these components, we're talking about giving all kids access to grade level curriculum, no matter where they are, grade level and above. And I think that's really important because we know we have a range of readers, at all these different levels, but all of these components allow us to give access to all kids and to push their thinking in ways that if we only went by their level, we'd really be doing a disservice in not allowing them access to that.
Another component is our word study. And so what does this look like? I think currently in our district, we have word study, we have Words Their Way that teachers are working with. Really it's a time where we're able to meet the needs of, phonics instruction in our students and hoping that we grow that and they're able to transfer that into their independent reading and independent writing. And so right now we are using Words Their Way. We're doing a lot with sorting and different activities, and I think a way that we're thinking of wanting to grow this is through, we want it to transfer into their independent reading and independent writing. And so thinking about how do we grow that? How do we incorporate some activities for transfer? A support that we have in place currently, our first coaching model was called the EAK, which is Enhanced Alphabetic Knowledge. This came out of research that we heard from both the state of Michigan, so from Lansing, out of Oakland schools. We worked on setting up these kits and having a sort of a way to teach alphabet, letter, and sound. And so we rolled this out in the fall to all kindergarten teachers and first grade. For kindergarten, they are teaching this to the whole class, and then for first grade, they are working with small groups. And so the way our coaching model worked, as Megan sort of touched on already, was we partnered up as coaches. And if Megan came into my building, maybe she would be teaching the lesson. I'd be sitting with the teacher, kind of talking, on what she's seeing. Then myself and the teacher would go back and debrief, and Megan would stay. And so it's allowed us to, I think, provide some great professional learning, and then, like she said, keep up with keep following up.
We've had tremendous feedback on it so far already from principals and from our teachers who've really loved the work that we're doing and are doing it wonderfully. I mean, we walk in the classrooms and you're hearing like the alphabet chanting going on. In this plan, we've always had a different plan where some teachers take a week to teach a letter, and so they're not getting through the alphabet, until February, right? So January, February, second part of the year, but in this plan, everyone will be done introducing the alphabet pretty soon, in the next couple of weeks. And so then that allows for more time where we can assess, do some small group work, some whole group reteaching, but it just gives us really targeting instruction in a whole new way than we have done before. So it's very exciting for EAK.
I think additionally, there was just some things up there about opportunity block. We were providing some schedules to teachers and just talking about that time and really making it, I think, meaningful and purposeful.
Okay, small groups. Natalie Lewis was at Teachers College, and this is a quote that we all loved. All students. So we're not looking at just a certain group of kids, but all students deserve small groups so they have a chance for thorough and diverse practice. And so I thought that was so powerful. There's some types of small groups listed up there: the table conference, a strategy group, a book introduction, guided reading, shared reading, some word work, which Erin was just talking about with word study. And I would offer that interactive writing fits right in there in that strategic small group. So it's a really powerful way to address needs of children and individualize and tailor things for the group that you're working with, wherever they are along the continuum. So that's pretty cool. Teachers would access common assessments, anecdotal records, any of that information to help them to group children based on common interest or common needs, and then work with them in any of those kinds of formats to address their needs and move them forward. We wanted to kind of point out the big thing that we had talked about at Teachers College is this whole idea of transfer, which was huge for us because the small groups that we were able to participate in, again, they were no more than 15 minutes, often 8 to 10 minutes of small group work, and we were actually children. I was acting as a second grader, sitting down with the teacher and pretending to be a second grader, and it was very interesting how she had us bring the book that we were reading in reading workshop, or bring the writing piece that we were working on, and we were pretending, of course, but to bring that with us. And then when she introduced a strategy, it was great because she said, now get out the book that you're actually reading in reading workshop, and let's practice that skill right now. So there was that transfer piece that was so huge and powerful, and something that we have grappled with over the years of we meet with kids in a small group or you conference with them, but then they go back to what they were doing before, and there isn't transfer for all children. And we have to go back and meet with them again and try to figure out how to bridge that. And this whole idea of having them practice it right then in the group is powerful because, okay, so we're working on CH sounds right here in the group. Go get your writing piece and see all the places where you can find CH, and let's do fix-ups right now. And I just thought that was so powerful. I know we all really enjoyed seeing that transfer piece, weaving all through the week, talking about how do we get kids to transfer what they learn into the real work of the day, into their reading and their writing and so forth. So it's so cool. We love it. and also again, fast pace. So it's highly joyful, highly engaging, they're very much involved. That was that piece, I have to be sure to say that, because the joy was always there, and that's what they wanted the kids to come away with, and wanted us to be reminded of always, that reading and writing is joyful. So you want it fast-paced and everybody involved, and then go off and practice and be well, that kind of thing. Just enjoy what you're doing. We want that for our children, to love reading.
All of our learning, at Teachers College, I think really, we felt really good that it just kind of fit naturally with all of the learning that we had done last year in our work at Lansing. Like we spent a whole year studying this coaching collaborative model, the essential practices in early literacy. I mean, that was our whole last year. We dedicated a lot of time to that, and everything that we learned at Teachers College fit beautifully with all of those ideas that we were studying. So it was a perfect match. Kind of confirmed all of our direction that we're heading in Clarkston, that we've been working on, and that we're going to continue to work toward. It just kind of lifted up what we've been doing and gave us some new insights as to how we can tweak some things. So all of this work is founded in research, not just from Teachers College, but in the work that's happening right here in Michigan too. We know that as a coaching team, we're trying to lift up core instructional practice. And so you see some kind of pillars there that we're really going to focus on as we're doing all these coaching cycles, is that we're really going to try to get teachers to attend to structure of lessons, to pacing, to engagement, and ultimately student independence with those. So those are some lenses that we're constantly going in and supporting teachers with, and our administrators as well, as we've been talking about this, our learnings, and we've shared all of these ideas with them too. And finally down there is this learn to say no in order to say yes, because it's hard to fit everything in, right? I mean, we know that there's a lot of stuff to do as teachers. Time is always our enemy. And yet, I think as a district, and even as individual teachers, we have to kind of learn to say no sometimes in order to say yes. Sometimes we kind of keep adding in all of these things until we feel so overwhelmed that we can't do any of the things that we're doing really, really well. And so I think that's a really important thing as a district to help kind of guide our teachers and say, what are our big rocks? Because once we know our big rocks, that's what we do first. Those are the things that we know we can't let go of. And there's also those things that we do because we've just loved and they've been around for a long time, and we have a hard time letting go sometimes. One of our presenters used this beautiful analogy of daffodils, and she said, every year in my garden I planted daffodils because they're yellow and they're bright and they're my favorite color. But every year the deer kept eating my flowers, right, year after year. And so finally one year I decided, you know what, I'm going to try marigolds this year. They're still yellow, they're still beautiful, they're not my favorite, but they're going to have a lasting impact, a better impact. And they did, and so that's kind of sometimes how we need to view what we're doing. Is this going to have a lasting impact? And if the answer is yes, then that's something that we need to invest time and professional learning into. If it's I'm not so sure, then maybe we need to look at something else. And so these big components, I think, are there to help guide us and say, these are our big rocks. And how can we be creative and put some of those things into these big rocks? We can't let go of these big rocks.
Okay, well, you know that we're reading people, so of course we have to share at least part of the book. So I'm just going to read a page or two. This is the book that Sarah, one of our leaders, our instructional leaders at the workshop at Teachers College, shared with us. And of course I had to put it in my Amazon basket as soon as I got home. So it's called It's Never Too Late. And it's by Dallas Clayton, a kid's book for adults. So it has kind of that Dr. Seuss feel. But I'm going to read. It's about the ups and downs of life. And I'm going to start, of course, with the ups. We'll skip the downs for a minute. That's what it's about. So I'm just going to show you the one picture. These are the moments you're going to remember. So go and collect them, create them and share. Find them and pull them right out of the air. And shape them and give them to others who care. Because it's never too late to begin. And today is the day the world might end. And today is the day that the world might start. So live it and love it with all of your heart. And so Sarah pointed out this page, and I want to show it to you because as she was focusing us on this page, she said, we need to surround ourselves with people who care about literacy, who care about kids learning how to read and think and write and be able to contribute to this world. And all of you are the people who care. And we're all in this together, and we're hoping our children learn to read and write, think and contribute to a world that desperately, desperately needs them. So we want to find that purpose, and look at all of us together. We can all do this together, and it's never too late to start. So we have new practices, some old that we're bringing back with some tweaking, and we're going to go after this and help our kids to find their purpose, because we need them to, and we want them to read and write and think.
So we want to leave you with a quote, and this was a quote from one of our keynote speakers, and it's just going back to this idea of joy, right? And that's first and foremost when we're thinking about reading and writing instruction with our students. We can't plan for joy. We can't force joy. We can't impose joy. We can create environments and conditions, opportunities and invitations in which joy has a chance. Joy is not always uppercase. Joy is often lowercase, quiet, fleeting, and soft. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Are there questions? Yeah.
I was busy taking I love that saying, I really do. Because as a weak reader in school, I'm one of those kids you speak about. And so are two of my children who graduated from Clarkston High School on completely opposite ends of the spectrum, girl and boy. And I've spent a lot of time in private reading coaches with phonemic awareness. So the first couple, early on in your presentation, I'm thinking of myself as that weak reader. And I'm thinking about how the joy that you're spewing is so so sweet. But when you're a weak reader, you're not in that sweet spot, okay? And so it's kind of it's that apple in the garden kind of feeling, I think. And so I'm trying to dive into your classroom and not be the adult weak reader that I once was, or be the child weak reader that I once was, and be this child that's a sponge who's trying to overcome these weaknesses amongst all these people who can read. And so I wonder how you are able to break through to those weak readers. And I don't understand, I wasn't necessarily catching at where in your program phonemic awareness is placed. If it's placed beginning, middle, and we're talking about how each of your different elements of the thing are later on. So I'm curious about that first.
And I think the best answer is that it's all through it. So, for example, like shared reading we were talking about, where that's a time where every student, including your most struggling students, know. I mean, I had kids when I was doing, kindergarten, these kids don't know their letters and sounds yet, and yet they could read every word of that page. They felt the most successful. Shared reading and interactive writing, those are two things that are so important, especially for those kids. And in fact, I would argue that you should also do them in small groups so that they have more text that they can read. Because number one, especially for our kids who are struggling, they need to feel successful. And so shared reading is one of those times of day where they get to read what everybody else is reading, right? They have confidence that they can read it. But through that, so like on my word study day, using the data that I had certain kids come up and point to words because I knew those kids, they didn't have one-to-one match yet, right? So I'm strategically pulling kids who need that. I know that there's a handful of kids who don't know, the M sound yet, right? So I'm on that page, like I'm gonna call that out, and I'm gonna have they're gonna be my superstars, right? They're gonna be my superstars. They're gonna know it. They're gonna be my experts by the end of this book with that letter. So that's how we use our data to really kind of help in a whole group way, like shared reading. Now, of course, in like word study, we're gonna also strategically work on those skills. So that's gonna be a small group intervention that can address specifically those skills, but we're also bringing them up in multiple contexts. So it's not just this one time that they're getting it, so that they can transfer.
Can I add to the interactive writing piece would also be a time when you might have 3 different writers there, and what you know, based on data, I'm gonna know that I've got a child who maybe needs to work on some sight words, so I'm gonna practice a couple sight words that they need. Another child might be having trouble with end punctuation and just doesn't remember to do that. Somebody else might be working on space, just putting space between words. We've all seen it where kids write and they don't put space. And so I might have those 3 together. They're all at different spots, but I know them so well that when we're writing and constructing that co-constructed sentence or 2 that we're writing, I'm going to have the child who forgets space. They're the space person every time because I'm going to have them have repeated practice with putting space. Somebody else is going to come up and boy, they're the one that needs to work on a certain word. I'm going to have them write that word in the sentence. That's their work. And the other person's going to be always putting the end punctuation every time because I know what they need. And so that's that way. And they're going to feel success because we're right there supporting them. And we're going to clap for each other and cheer. And they're going to be, you know, feeling more and more confident
And with
as they
different
go.
kids, so they don't always feel like, oh, I'm in that group again, right? You're talking
Right,
about
diverse.
mixing kids so that you don't, so that it's, you know, we know, like, when we struggle with something, and you're always with the same group of kids, and that's what with this core instructional piece that we're trying to get away from is always having this one model where you feel like, oh man, I gotta go out of the room again. I have to do this again because we want kids to be in the classroom. We have to be strategic and purposeful in our instruction in order to do that, in order to meet all of these needs. And so these major components allow us to do that. We have to be strategic. We have to be deliberate.
I know all about the space capitalization periods. I had one who, I loved the transfer idea. I loved the 5-day plan and the transfer idea. I think that there is a great opportunity for those weak readers to feel like super people. When they've seen something, you know, we all know advertising wise you gotta hear something 5 times before you're gonna get any element of it. So that 5 time for me then really clicked where I think a lot of our weak readers are really gonna gain some strengths from being able to utilize the same reading material in 5 times in 5 different ways, like potentially. So I really think that is something that I really like. I'm curious too, how is our staff coming along and absorbing the new processes?
I can speak from my building. They've been very excited to have sort of like this systematic way of, like for EAK, for example, in kindergarten, they said, everything's all here, it's all ready for me. You know, we went through sort of front loading it, kind of explaining the purpose behind it. They've been very excited to have all the resources provided, but also to get the learning from us, I think, the modeling. And so I know they've been very excited about that. Just the idea, the thought of shared reading, right? We know it's coming. That's another thing that I think they're anxious, right? They know there's a need, they see the need, and I think that we're doing a lot to work with them on that. And so I think it's been well received in my building.
So my last comment is, how do we help the kids who don't have? And then what I mean by have is have books, have parents who reinforce it at home. How do we help our kids who don't have?
Good question. You know, I think
I didn't have a book until I was 3rd grade.
Yeah.
The first book of my own, personal.
well, that's other work that we are, you know, with our support program, you know, kids do get to take books home every week. Most of our schools do have a take-home library where books are going home from the classroom library or from like a take-home library. So most of our schools have that in place. And we are talking to them a little bit more about taking books home from personal libraries more and more. And you know, as especially as our PTAs are supporting that a lot, they're typically very supportive in helping with that. You know, we're finding a lot of success. And I feel like we are starting to get more and more books in kids' hands. You know, we have lots of different programs. I mean, like in the summer, we have the bookmobile, you know, that goes around, you know, in certain areas. We have our summer reading programs where we're sending books home frequently. So we're trying to do a lot to get books in kids' hands. Yeah, please.
Last year, 3 schools piloted a Reach Out and Read program, which is really wonderful, bringing people from the community coming into the schools during the school day and reading with kids. So that was really powerful too, and a chance for kids to just have time to read. And of course, they were taking those books home, but an extra practice so that when they did get home, they knew what they were reading and could read to somebody else if there was somebody who was at home who would like to read with them. So another way of reaching, we've got community members who could give them a chance to have some extra practice, and it was wonderful. And we're hoping to have that spread through all 7 schools this school year. During the middle of the year, we'll get that launched at Parent Teacher Conference Night. So that's another passion.
Is that during the pull-out during the day?
It can be pull out or push in, depending on what the teacher wanted. They could come in and read during a reading workshop time or during a time where kids are all involved in reading. So it's part of that reading program. And we had sign-up times, so it was just the times that would be really helpful for kids and work with that schedule, so we're not pulling them out of lunchtime or some weird time of the day. We don't want them to miss instruction, but it would be a time when they would be reading anyway and have a chance to have somebody share and read with them, because maybe they don't get that support at home as much. So
Is this primarily focused K through 3, or does it continue on 4 or 5,
Can I
upper
say,
L?
I just want to say about interactive writing, because I didn't get to say this. K2 will be doing a lot with interactive writing in the process that I talked with you about with the shared pen. And 3rd, 4th, and 5th, they shared with us at Teachers College what a wonderful practice called interactive editing. And so that gets to grammar and punctuation in an interactive way as well. So that was kind of neat. There are some things that we can share with the upper grade teachers and those students as well that kind of bump things up for them, and are also some tweaks that we can also, we're going to address those during those data days. We won't have a coaching cycle for that this year, but we certainly will be sharing some wonderful things for the upper grade teachers as well. So we have some stuff for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade as well.
Did you have a question?
May I?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming. Ms. Finney taught Colin, who's now a 10th grader, right? So I've been doing this for 10 years with her. Every time she speaks, there's tears and I get weepy, and it's just amazing. I laugh because I love, because truly, she was my first experience with my son with a teacher. I thought, oh my God, are they all gonna be like this? Anyway, that wasn't my comment. So for me, this is a great connection as we've moved to more of these coaching models, and I feel like we got a little bit of that connection last time when you brought the instructional technologists in to actually see how it's working. You know, it's one thing for you to explain it to us and we approve it and we say, yes, go, but I'm so glad to hear that going into the classroom and doing this sort of one-on-one with teachers is part of this, because I think we've all, in the past, not liked when teachers sort of get pulled out en masse, you know, and so to me, that's one of the benefits that maybe I didn't make the connection for, is that we aren't going to be taking teachers out and putting them in a room and bringing in subs, that you still get to be in the classroom and that they get to be in the classroom with you. So thank you, that was just a connection for me that I made. And I wanted to ask just about a couple, these are very specific kind of tactile things, but these are things I've heard very specifically from parents who have very specific needs. And so you mentioned one, which was grammar instruction. And I, you know, and it almost looks like trees for the forest, right? I mean, with this being the forest, but these are just questions that I've had raised from parents. And so where is the emphasis on some of those building blocks like grammar? And is that, you know, I don't know if it's new or if it's part of this, that'd be one. The other is sort of how we identify and work with some of these challenges. And one parent who has spoken with me, and I think others of you, is you know, her daughter is dyslexic, and so it's more common, I think, than I really realized. But it's a very distinct sort of learning challenge, distinct from, you know, just someone who might be a weak reader. And so she had talked with me extensively about phonics versus phonemic awareness and the kinds of sort of specialized, if you will, I don't know if training is the right word, but sort of specialized learning needs that her daughter has had in terms of dyslexia. So I just, since I thought we were talking about literacy tonight, maybe I could just bring up those two specific instances and get some thoughts on, you know, where it fits overall.
I feel like,
Go ahead, Amy.
I was gonna say, I feel like as far as targeting or pinpointing specific needs, for example, like dyslexia, I think that's something we're excited for, are these half-day data days that we have with grade levels, where we're able to sit down and really analyze all the pieces of data that they have and sort of make sense of that with them and think, what is it that the student really needs, and then what are the interventions that we can put in place. And so I think dyslexia is one of them, but I think that we would have a, you know, myriad of things that we're really trying to get at here, like what is the underlying cause or challenge that this reader has and how can we move that forward, I think. And so I think that that's one way that we are hoping to sort of move that forward.
Just to piggyback on that, one of the things that we know about dyslexia is that most children who end up in special education have reading difficulties. And when we look at them in terms of dyslexia, most of them, when we go back and we look at the data, it has to do with deficits in those phonological skills, phonemic awareness, and phonics. And so this ability to look more carefully at data with our coaches, sitting beside a teacher to truly analyze where is this child's reading breaking down, and then offer that very targeted instruction around those phonemic skills and those phonological skills. We use a lot of Orton-Gillingham methodology, which is the one program that we know is a tried and true, goes back many, many years to target those skills. The difference is, I think we're better able to identify those children, and certainly having Veronica Isaac in the data person's chair now is helping with that in terms of who are these children that need that, putting these reading growth plans together so that not only are the teachers aware of the issues that the children have, but we're letting parents know as well. Part of the reading growth plan is that parents have to commit to doing things at home. And I know you know about our tips by text that we've been sending to parents 3 times a week for the past year. And these are things you can do at home to help your child develop these phonological skills and these phonics skills. So all of these methodologies with shared reading, interactive writing, the small group work, it's all with that overarching goal of ours this year, that given the number of children across the district in these K-3 age range that have difficulties in that, it's what's driven this targeted approach this year with the EAK in kindergarten, and then all of these other initiatives to really help grow that. With regards to the grammar, again, thinking about Radhika, one of the things that we're super excited about is that now we can look more closely at our M-STEP scores as well as our ACT and break down where those issues are occurring with kids. We have not had this ability to really dig into the data to the degree that we now have. Radhika and I have been talking a lot about what we can do with the data we have. So we can take an ACT, for example, and see where are Clarkston kids struggling when we look at what are all the sample questions. The same is true with M-STEP. And if we find that grammar is an area that is an area of need across the district, then we can do more with interactive writing. We can do more with this notion from Teachers College of how can we do interactive grammar work with our older children. And then, of course, talking with Laura Mahler, our secondary subject area coordinator, to see what we can do at the secondaries level as well. We do believe very strongly that there is such a correlation between reading and writing. And we know that children who are more avid readers are exposed to more grammar because they read more. And then having sample text next to them when they're writing so that they're studying a piece of reading and then they're trying to incorporate those same grammar structures into their writing. If you talk to anyone who is a published writer, Mary Aaronworth, a Teachers College consultant who has written a book on grammar, said that when she first started her career as a professional writer, she took mentor texts and sat them next to her text and said, I like the way this is written, I'm going to write it the same way. We've incorporated that practice from kindergarten on. We give kids samples of student work to look at, samples of work that's been written by Teachers College consultants as if they were a kindergartner or third grader or fifth grader to study. What are those structures? What are those conventions? What is the craft that we see in this piece of writing that you now can emulate in your own writing? So there's certainly both things that are on our radar. And I think with the help of the coaches and just this engagement and excitement on the part of the teaching staff and their heightened awareness that these things are areas of concern, I think in the next couple of years, we should see growth in those areas.
Thank you, thank you.
I hate to cut this short, it's already,
Can I have like 90 seconds?
oh, okay.
I would add to what Mrs. Horst said on a few fronts. I'd love to thank our couple hundred elementary teachers have all been to Columbia and know exactly what they're doing and are just skilled in every single way. But I mean, we have the full gamut from brand new teachers who have never managed a classroom to teachers who are old and veteran and have not been exposed to the research that the new teachers have done.
I can follow up, this is going down.
That was a good word.
And I understand that we have the full range, and I think the way to do professional development has changed dramatically, and this sort of ongoing embedded coaching model. I mean, that's the professional world, right? I want to see it, I want to try it, I want to fail at it, I want to improve, based on feedback. The comments about not pulling teachers out all at once. I mean, to have two of you in one classroom, this is a resource that really I think, and why I wanted to take the extra time is as a board, we absolutely have to maintain the resource. This sort of non-load bearing teacher concept, 10, 15 years ago was sort of easy pickings when things got tight. But in my mind, it's not optional. This is the way that, to what Mr. Ryan said when we started, this is the way if we want to affect instruction and affect our kids, like this is it. And I think I've been super impressed, to your question. I mean, my kids come home with books, and it's a whole new world about, every day we got to read books. So how do we change our home routine to read these darn books because they've got to read the books, and it's a big deal. And then to be in a classroom and have kids come out for the hour and a half that I'm there, and every kid has a different deck of words, and there's a few words in each one that kid struggles with. Like there's 20, 24 kids in that classroom. How does the teacher know, right? How do you know which kid has a problem with the period and the space and the
Their handwriting tells you pretty fast.
Well, I mean, but I mean, it's tough to manage that many kids. I've been super impressed. I think where we fail is the communication piece of sort of letting people know that what you just described to us, and you didn't touch hardly any of it, I would say. You did a great job in your presentation,
right.
but there's so much more that we're doing that's super impressive to me personally. I think we need to do a much better job sort of telling our story, because I see this as a real competitive advantage to us. And when we talk strategic planning, from a messaging standpoint, how do we capture these few examples that you used about some of the shared reading, 5 days in a row using the same text for different things. I think if we, used our Independence TV folks and captured some of that and edited some of that down to really tell the story, like what powerful stuff that sets us up, whether that's kindergarten parents, preschool parents making a choice, or whether that's, parents that just don't know what their kids are doing, and that's where I think if we look at where we invest in literacy going forward, in my mind, like that's absolutely it, because I'm experiencing it. If it was me 5 years ago, I have no idea. If it's me 10 years from now, you just don't know, right? And I mean, I think as a board, we're coming along. We're doing sessions like this, and we've done with technologists and math. I think is a future focus. I mean, these are the kind of things that we've got to get. We're drinking the Kool-Aid. We've got to communicate better. I'm sorry, I took
More than 90
2
seconds.
minutes.
However, I will say this is why we recorded the workshop tonight. For that specific purposes, we thought there were some opportunities to let our community know this is what we're investing in. So, and we do take this very seriously. We do deeply appreciate the hard work that you bring forward to all these kids, helping them learn, giving them a solid start, because it has such a long-term impact on how well they perform later on in the classroom. So we know that, we appreciate that. Unfortunately, because of time, and being president, I have to stop us now. We'll take about a 2-minute recess. We will go back into the larger room. But I would suggest if you have any comments or any feedback or questions, please forward them to Mr. Ryan, and I'm sure we'll get some answers and more information. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.